spread among children and from children is not really very big at all, not like one would have suspected. So let's try to get the kids back.
Rock and I think it's a right for people that bad and health care.
We can proclaim the palmist with the palmist who wrote these following words. The Lord is my strength and my shield.
Ah, the palmist. So I got myself into a wormhole here that I was hoping wouldn't happen. And it's regarding four palmists from about 55 years ago. The Beatles. I am back listening to, spending time listening to the Beatles. If you don't know anything about me, and that means that you have a healthy life, actually, and you have important things to do. But I was a failed musician in my 20s due to my own lack of discipline, and because I'm a jerk. So, but I loved the Beatles, and as of my early teen years, I wanted to be John Lennon, and I thought he was the greatest thing in the world, and I adopted all of his politics and his philosophy. Because John Lennon, I was so enamored with John Lennon, and that actually I got into, because Lennon got in fistfights in school and was a bad egg in school. Mm-hmm. I decided that I would also be a tough guy and get into fights in school. So I started with one kid, me and my friend John, who you know. Mm-hmm. We went after this kid. We weren't gonna beat him up. I don't know if I would ever have known properly how to throw a punch, but just rustle him up and throw him on the ground, and just to show him that we were cool, that I was an outraged, angst-filled genius like John Lennon was when he was a teenager. So I went after this. We found our mark, a fairly short fellow. And thought this guy, this is our guy. He's not popular. This is junior high. If those of you who are counting, it's McCall Junior High School in Winchester, Massachusetts. In case you want to visit there on the trolley tour, we saw this kid and we said, okay, I'll go on this side, you go on that side, and I'll get him in a headlock, whatever, and then you can give him a. Whenever we pounce on this kid. He's out waiting for the bus or something. We pounce on this kid. And this dude fought like a frigging cornered badger. He was fight. He was putting all his effort, everything he had, it was life or death, into fending us off to me and John. And we're like, not only am I not getting him in a headlock, but this thing's going sideways quickly. He's
Good.
now.
You deserved it.
Yeah, and this kid's so angry and mad. He doesn't know, by the way, that we have that we are going by the UN rules of engagement. He's not. He's punching away. He thinks he's about to be killed because we didn't warn him. And it changes quickly. It reminds me of the 4 Days War, whatever the thing, when everybody attacked Israel, and then everybody suddenly retreated in 69 or whatever. We were on the attack, at a stalemate, and then on the defensive, and then in full retreat within 20 seconds. And we were running the hell away from this kid. This kid manhandled us. He rebuffed our attack with pure perseverance and strength. And we were like, oh my God, retreat. And me and John ran into the woods.
You wimps.
Oh, no, totally.
Jerks. I mean,
yes.
imagine.
Yeah, oh yeah. This guy, totally. That
Good.
was, yes.
Good.
That put a nail in my pugilist career right there. That was it. It was over. I was not a tough guy. But I loved John Lennon. Still, even through that, I had to scratch that off my Lennon list. I'm sorry, we've got unshockingly, there is a child who has penetrated the room, who has permeated the enclosure and has messed with equipment, which is fine because technically they are our children and we are their parents. So there's a fine line. Hey, Anson, you leaving? Yeah. Okay, I'll see you in a bit. Okay. But anyway, so I love John Lennon, and back then to love the Beatles in 1986 or whatever, what time was certainly in '86. That was not a cool thing. That was not a cool thing to be doing. I mean, you could love Motley Crue or Rat or even Duran Duran, depending on your taste. But you weren't loving the Beatles. That was your parents' thing, exactly. So I had to, when I read these biographies of the Beatles and Lennon, etc., I'd wrap all my books in paper. Like you would your math. I would, because there's no way, if somebody saw me, you would get endless ridicule. And it was not considered something that was okay. But I was just thinking about, back then I went to, there was ZLX, which in Boston here is a big classic station. Still around, thankfully. Of course, now classic rock stations play Bon Jovi, which is not ideal. But I went to this convention. My dad dropped me off at it down at the Cambridge, Hyatt in Cambridge. And it was the greatest thing in the world to go to this convention with the fellow Beatles people, all paunchy, dudes in their 40s or older, singing songs, Beatles songs, in their little booths, It reminds me of the Simpsons, booth guy. They all knew much more about the Beatles than you could ever. They trade banter from booth to booth. They'd sell stuff, bootleg copies, bootleg photos, and copies of music and this and that. And back then, there was no way to get anything. This convention was the internet. So if you wanted to see the Beatles in Shea Stadium or Candlestick Park or wherever it was, you'd have to go to one of these places and pay money for a video cassette if they had a... But I remember one guy singing, "Don't Break My Arm." And he was just so cool, He was in the Beatles convention set, probably gone to Beatle Magic, for 10 years in a row and knew, how to get the best placement for his 6-foot table and how to deal with the vendors and, how to game the set. He was a cool guy at the convention. Yeah, I was just thrilled to be there, to see all this stuff and just Beatles stuff everywhere and all these pictures or whatever. And I bought whatever I could. I couldn't really afford much music. I bought some music, which was interviews from Perth, Australia, and different interviews, etc. And then Alice, thank you, by the way, for the reassuring yeses and mm-hms.
I've lost audio.
Oh, have you? Damn it. What do you want me to do? Should I keep going? I'm going to keep going.
No, keep going, and then we'll just put it into the YouTube video
we'll just add this one. Okay, we lost audio. I think it's about time to make some decisions. Actually.
So it's time to buy a new cable, I think, is the issue. I had it for a second.
Is it coming back?
Is
the audio coming back? It doesn't really matter,
Okay, well, we'll do it, and
hopefully the people
add
watching
in the audio. Here it is again.
Oh, hold on, Alice. Maybe the people watching YouTube will assume it's their machines that are screwing up, and will try to fix it. If you just dropped audio, if you're watching YouTube,
right,
and your audio dropped, that was us.
I'll fill the audio.
Don't worry.
I'll fill the audio in. I'll put it in from the.
I'm not too worried. It's fine. So anyway, so to love John Lennon it was harder to do in at least Massachusetts in the mid '80s. Eventually, you could get if you got a few bucks together for having a job, you could go to a couple of record places and get rare copies of later Lennon singles or rare, some places had the Beatles Butcher album cover. Do you know what that is?
No.
The Beatles, you seem thrilled. The Beatles, Yesterday and Today, the album that Yesterday is on, their first cover had pictures of pieces of dolls on them and butcher meat on them. Huh. Yes, which was considered oddly...
It's very edgy.
Oddly gross. And so that was discontinued. They put a paper bag over it or something.
Oh.
So it doesn't matter. So anyway. So my point is this. The point is this, is that, so now Alice and I are writing a Christmas song. And so I've been now playing the guitar. And I've just, almost every chord or good chord progression, anything I know how to play on the guitar is essentially something I've ripped off from the Beatles. And so it's got me in thinking about the Beatles more, and just how times have changed. And so today, we've been trying to get the equipment to work. We've had some challenges. Just listening to this, just YouTube, your blues backing track. Oh no, this right here is the Beatles in the studio talking about on YouTube. Just they're working through a song.
Kept pointing up there. Why did you keep pointing up there every time?
I was doing it as a joke because every time we came to there, you pointed it out.
Well, that was the first time that I went wrong when you started doing that, and ever since then we've had this
Do you
want
to fight?
No.
That's John and Paul screwing around in the studio, talking about it at some point when John sings there, Paul is mimicking John, who was doing this. I think it's For No One, the song that they were doing. But I mean, this stuff now is available everywhere on YouTube. What you would have had to do when I was 13 years old to ever hear this, first of all, it wasn't even out there, but you would have to find a bootleg of a bootleg of a bootleg of a bootleg. You would have to know somebody. It would be incredible to ever see this stuff, to watch it and hear it and get it. And now it's everywhere. It's just, you can hear all of it. It's unlocked. The Beatles are all yours. Anytime you want, you can conjure up the song. Back then, I didn't have the White Album. And if I wanted to hear songs from the White Album, I was SOL. There was no White Album to just conjure up. I could call the classic rock station and say, could you play this? Depending on what song it was, maybe they would. But that was it.
Mm-hmm. Did they ever have Beatles weekends? Oldies 103 used to have like a Beatles
Everybody
weekend.
had Beatles weekends, yes.
And they could just play requested Beatles songs all weekend.
Right, yeah. Everybody had that. And as a matter of fact, even the AM talk stations, WBZ back then, would play music on the weekends in Beatles songs, yeah. It was a different time. Anyway, I don't know what the point of this is that I've just gotten on this track of doing this stuff. And it's just it's a different world. And I'm sure you know, if you're listening right now, you've been to see the way things have changed so much. You know, I get these prompts on my phone every 5 minutes telling me a kid is trying to buy a new app for 99 cents. You know, and all that app does is give them everything they want right then and now. It's incredible. It's incredible. And because we're parents, and if you're watching, listening, we're under siege constantly. I understand most of it is, you know, garden variety parenting, but we're under siege constantly. We just say yes to the app, and they get it. And I don't know what they do. It could be the nuclear codes, or it could be...
I know what they do.
I don't know what to do. I made it very clear.
You can't even get the request on your phone if I enter multiple passwords to order the app, so it has to go through me before you even get the notification.
So all of that stuff, by the way, when the Beatles broke in and were huge, they were on the Big 68 in Boston, the WRKO. The Big 68, it was called. 680 AM, and that's where you go to hear the Beatles and all your rock and roll. And the guy who set up the Big 68, who set up all of the engineering stuff, all the stuff, you know, to get the station online, was George Capalbo's father, Alice. Did you know that? So, if you're watching this right now, you're wondering why you wasted this much time. But you want to know, we've had George Capalbo on too. George is a friend of mine. George is a big science geek, I think it's fair to say, in a good way. And he's an engineer, a studio radio engineer. He runs a company, or he's in a company called Backbone, which does all sorts of remote broadcasting stuff. It's great. If you want to start a podcast or a radio show, whatever, etc. George and I also have a podcast together called The Point of Things. And George and I talked, and Alice talked today. We brought George on because there's something, if you didn't know, in the desert of Utah, in the place called Moab,
you can see his face.
There is something called the Monolith. This mysterious object has shown up in the desert.
Something in the
was something. Well, it's never anything, of course.
Gone.
Anyway, so my wife is a geek, and so is George, and so this object just showed up. And people started talking about it. Now it's gone. So this is very important and interesting to people. And so Alice and George,
to me and George,
and I talked about the Monolith phone. Maybe you'll find this interesting. I do like the idea of things popping up, pranksters doing things, or really drunk people doing things. I know at one time there's a sculpture at MIT of the globe. It's at it's not one Kendall Square, but it's at Kendall Square at MIT. It's a sculpture of the globe. It's near the Marriott in the old MIT bookshop, if that's still there. And after a night of cocktails in 1994, we tried to steal it by tying something to the back of the car onto it and driving away with it. And it was like a brass statue. So that would have been something that was gone. Instead, that didn't work. Not shockingly. And instead, we took a newspaper box And I used that as my dresser for a lot of the 90s. I was that's the kind of guy I was. So there you go. I was quality. If
Is
you
this
listen
the
to
same time period you were sleeping on your friend's laundry pile?
That's exactly right. Exactly right. I was quality, just in case. And if you listen to our last podcast, which has a lot of watches, by the way, with Caroline and Jane, even Caroline, who said the bar is low for herself for dating, I don't think that she was. I don't think that would have done it. She would have said, "Just give me something to work with, other than you drunkenly driving and trying to steal a statue for no reason at all."
Well, now taking down statues is
right.
Totally kosher. You could have
said
it was
the
a
problem
free
is I was
speech.
also a young conservative. I was 20 years old, a conservative in Massachusetts, and an a-hole.
So you don't think that saying it was an anti-globalist statement about
I wouldn't even know what that meant. All I know is that it was cool, and I wanted it in my room. And so we tried to get it. But it didn't matter. But anyway, so we talked to George today about the Monolith, Alice's own version of the statue. And it's interesting stuff, actually. And the conversation moved from simply the Monolith to a couple of other things. But his name is George Capalbo. He's on Twitter as what, Alice? Do you remember?
At G Capalbo.
At G Capalbo. Check him out. Anyway, we just got off the phone with him. The phone. We just got off the phone. God, I'm young. We just talked to him a minute ago, and it was a good time. Interesting stuff. This is kind of a... By the way, we've got some politics coming up that we'll talk about afterwards.
But the Monolith is very important, I feel, as I'm sure you agree.
Alice loves the Monolith. So we'll hit that first. Then after that, we'll hit a little bit of politics, and then we'll let you get on with your Sunday or Monday. George, it's been way too long. How are you? How are you weathering through this post... We're at the tail end of the pandemic. The election is over. We're on the other side, George.
I'm weathering it. I've been very busy. My company's been very busy because of all this stuff going on with lots of people wanting to broadcast remotely. So I've just been wall to wall. And I know you have too. So it's not like for those of you listening at home, it's not like we hate each other or we haven't got along. We're just too busy. But we're back. We're back and we're strong.
Correct.
And we're back.
Now we're on two podcasts.
We're
George.
simulcast.
We're on the point of things. Simulcasting, exactly. And on Tom Shattuck's Burn Barrel podcast.
A fabulous production.
I'm going to text you something, George.
And by the way, if you're listening to on pointofthings.com. Yes, I can.
? Send.
I will.
Answer it in text, please, George. I don't want people to know we were talking about it.
All right.
I'm just kidding.
No,
George.
just saying no.
No, but
no. Is that all right? No, I'll send it to you. But if you're listening live, you'd hear it live. So good. Well,
I know, George.
Excellent. So,
hey,
yes.
you should tell folks, tell the Tom Shattuck Burn Barrel audience exactly how to find us on this podcast.
Right. This podcast, which predates Burn Barrel, it's basically non-controversial other than we're both speaking. And it's on thepointofthings.com. And you can also find it on iTunes podcasts, and you can also find it on Google Podcasts. And is it on Stitcher too? I think you sent it everywhere.
It is on Stitcher, exactly.
Right.
And can people listen live? Where is that?
Hey, you can listen live.
Pointofthings.com and hit. Right.
It just starts playing, but there's a play button if you need to hit it. And it's on. Correct.
Very cool. All right, George. I can't believe it's almost a year ago since we weren't able to make your New Year's party, but that would have been a great last hurrah before the world ended.
Because we're not doing it this year.
Today, George.
Either.
Right. I believe we've got... there's a big issue that's afoot, George.
Yes.
And this is something my wife has been extremely, extremely interested in vocal about, which, of course, is borderline torturous for me. Because obviously, I am not as into it, but I'm going to see if I can get myself into it. And this has to do with...
Go ahead. Keep going. The right music for this.
Okay. This has to do with a mysterious object, if you don't know, listening right now, that's been found in the Mojave Desert. Is that right, Alice?
It's in Utah.
No,
it's in Utah.
Moab, Utah.
Desert?
Yeah.
They have desert.
Moab, Utah.
They found it while counting sheep.
Correct.
And what is sheep? Does sheep bleat? George, did you know that sheep bleat?
They do. I don't know if they spell it out, but they
That's
do.
true.
I don't have a sheep sound. I could find that. But
It's okay. I hear the vacuum cleaner. That's good enough. So,
all right, enough of that.
so all right, George.
All right.
Is this an obelisk? We're told. Is that what it
A
is?
monolith.
A monolith. Okay, so I saw something.
I have some audio of
Okay, I saw some
description of
companies-
this. I have an audio of the description of this. Are you ready?
All right.
All right, here we go.
When we first found it, we thought it might be an outcrop of magnetic rock. All the geological evidence was against it.
We thought it might be the upper part of some buried structure, so we excavated out on all sides, but unfortunately we didn't find anything else.
And what's more, the evidence seems pretty conclusive that it seems to have been deliberately buried. Deliberately buried. Deliberately buried.
Those are the Bureau of Land. No, they weren't the Bureau of Land Management pilots who had accidentally discovered this from the air, this shiny object. No, that was actually from the source that everyone's referring to, 2001: A Space Odyssey, where they find this black monolith, which is exactly the proportions 1 by 4 by 9. And it's been buried for millions of years, and they've uncovered it, and they go to see it. The sun rises, the sun hits it, and it immediately emits this huge, loud radio signal that deafens everyone, and which is directional straight to Jupiter. And then there's the rest of the movie. So, of course, everyone connects this monolith in Utah, which is in this beautiful brown rock canyon. Have you ever been to Utah? Utah is a beautiful state. I was stuck there once for a weekend.
I have not.
Oh, and it's mountains and forests and herds of deer and fresh air and then desert and canyons. And it's just an amazing place and a lot of empty space. So there's a lot of room to do weird stuff. So these guys are flying over, and this thing is made of reflective
But this area
aluminum.
is pretty remote, is it not?
Well,
So
actually,
can you guys,
This place is- hang on.
Actually, it turns out it doesn't.
I want you guys to tell people what we're talking about here exactly,
monolith.
George.
So a mysterious
What's going on?
monolith has been found near southern Utah, and near Moab. Well, and Bureau of Land Management says it's so far away from anything, we don't really want anyone to go, so we're not going to tell people where it is. But of course, the internet figured it out.
Of course, Reddit immediately.
Yeah, exactly.
The monolith.
And people have been there.
And yeah, and now it's gone.
It disappeared. So I have some audio. This is a guy named David Serber who went there. Okay, so the 2001 monolith is 1 by 4 by 9. This is 12 feet tall, and it's a triangle, and it's made out of looks like stainless steel.
Right.
And it's got rivets. So it's clearly, I mean, there are marks in the ground. Actually, well, here's the audio from this guy David Serber that looks it over. You ready? Here we go. Oh.
All right, y'all wanted the magnet test, so I didn't bring a strong enough one, but not sticking.
He's standing in front of the monolith.
Those are the attempts. And then, let's see. So is it solid? Not solid. Sounds a little bit like a cardboard box. And then, to the lighter side, you got rivets and handprints probably from Diesel Dave.
And these are like these rivets, like these pop rivets, you know, that you put into things. So it looks pretty, very man-made.
So all the panels are separate and then riveted. Hollow, riveted, not magnetic. Hey.
That's it. So and there's marks in the ground where they cut into the stone and buried this thing. So it was deliberately buried, but not by aliens. And now it's gone. So
Right.
And apparently it was illegal.
This is on government land.
Right.
This is government land, Bureau of Land Management, government, federal property, federal land.
Correct.
Where it's not illegal to be on usually, so you're allowed to be on this.
But you're not allowed to build art installations that you need a concrete cutter to cut into the stone to stick them in there.
Correct.
Generally.
Was this able to be traversed with a vehicle, or is this out in the middle of nowhere?
So it turns out this same dude, Don Serber, says, "Oh, this isn't anywhere remote. It's like about 400 yards from a campsite where lots of people go. And here's how to get to it. And here's what I did."
Huh.
So you could drive within, maybe a 10-minute, 15-minute walk to get to it. But you had to have you couldn't just go in your car. You had to have an off-road vehicle. So it's still remote.
Now,
lots of people
how
are there.
heavy would the metal be to build the thing?
Well,
how heavy would the metal be to build the thing? Like, so if
Apparently
you were going to
not
go,
heavy.
if you were going to build this, George, like how hard would it be? Like to bring all the stuff with? I'm with you. I agree. It's man-made, but I'm like wondering how much of a commitment this was for whoever did it.
It seems like it's 12-foot sheets of stainless steel and a rivet gun, and maybe some angles, to rivet to it. And then they brought a saw. So you could see someone coming out in their Jeep with all this stuff in it, and then building it on the site, and then burying it and thinking it's pretty cool, have a beer, whatever they did, whatever weird stuff happened. And off they went, they left it. And so there's some question how long it's been there. So some people think it's been there for 4 years, which is possible. It's stainless steel, and it really doesn't, it rains there, but not a lot.
My understanding is people were looking at Google Maps and they the history of the images, and were dating it between 2015, 2016.
Correct.
That was the timestamps of the ones before it was there, and then when you could see it on the Google Maps pictures. But there's also some people were speculating that it's some kind of tribute to this artist who built things that kind of look similar to that, John McCormick.
Yes,
Have
correct.
you been seeing that
I went and I Googled some of the stuff as well,
which
it's
he
kind
was
of
dead
shiny
by the time
he
was.
So I don't think he did it.
Right,
He has
was
an
dead
alibi
by the time this was built, but somebody could have done it who was into his stuff, I suppose. But because his son did say that he had said he left remote bits of artwork places.
So
but,
maybe it was.
Like
it'd be pretty cool if it had been there for 50 years and no one noticed it up until now. So I've built a monolith, so I know what it takes to do in 2001. So back in the day, my college friends and I would get together a couple times a year, usually at New Year's Eve party, which we still do. Of course, not doing it this year, but that's another story for another day. But we'd meet in Labor Day weekend. We'd go down to Maryland, where the guy who started this thing, his name is Bill, and he used to have Bill's Party back in the college days. So in 2001, we just looked at each other and said, let's go build a monolith. So we went to Home Depot, and we bought sheets of MDF plywood and paint, 100 cans of spray paint, and we built a monolith. It didn't have a top, but it was 1x4x9, and we just stuck it in his front yard. And then it was kind of there for a long time. Then eventually it got cut up, and I think I have a couple pieces of it. Of course, we cut it into 1x4x9 pieces. So we have a monolith. But it was really kind of a fun thing.
It's like a fractal monolith.
It's like a fractal monolith, exactly, right? So that was pretty cool. And it was a fun project. And, of course, we're all tech nerds, so it was perfect for us. And it was 2001. And you know what? That was maybe a couple weeks before 9/11. So that felt like the end of the innocence to me. That was, everything got serious after that. That was sort of the last stupid thing we did in the 90s tech boom kind of thing. So it was a good thing to do. But I guess there were other monoliths that popped up in 2001. I think there was one in Seattle, which is the correct proportions. But of course, this was not meant to be a 2001 monolith. That's what people connected to because it gave you that same kind of eerie feeling. But this is a triangle. And it's stainless steel, and it's clearly got rivet holes, and there's no, there's not going to be a cottage industry of people saying it's impossible for them to bend the metal like that. This couldn't happen naturally on Earth. These aren't materials. It's stainless steel and rivets, and now it's gone. So what happened? Somebody stole it, right? Someone just said, well, let's just take this thing.
Either someone stole it or whoever it was came back for it, I suppose.
Maybe said we don't want them
before they could be identified.
Crap, now we're in trouble, Tom. Let's get out to Utah and get this thing now before it's too late. But it's gone.
Right.
It seems like a total government thing to do. To take it down.
Yeah, but they didn't.
Well, they
said
say
they
didn't, though. The government says they didn't.
And they actually said...
we know they always do, exactly.
Right. They actually said, well, it's illegal, but it's not our job to prosecute that. Here's the quote. It says, we don't investigate crimes involving private property, which is what this is. That's handled by the local sheriff's office. So they just sort of said, if the sheriff wants to go do something about it, we don't care.
Right.
Go for it. So I think it's the right thing.
I was surprised that somebody could get away with it now that I would assume now that they know where it is. It's like a tourist attraction. People would be going to look at it. And
they were.
Like you say, okay, so it's near this campsite and no one was watching it. No one saw who took it away. I don't understand how somebody could steal it. Now, I would have put the thing under guard, first of all.
It's very dark in the desert at night.
Find out what's going on, right?
In that remote desert, it's really dark.
Jeez.
There are no lights anywhere. If you're driving down a long road, you just see this light coming in the distance. You go, what is that? Is that like some kind of alien or something? Then it's a car, but it's so far away that its headlights meld into one and it shimmers in the heat coming off the road.
So how would you get it out? Because it's buried. The bottom of it's buried, right? So they would have to could you just lift it out, the thing, and throw it in the back of your pickup truck?
Maybe. I have no idea how heavy it was, but if it's sheets of...
Or cut it up, or...
Yeah, maybe they cut it up, or maybe they just got a crowbar and they just kind of wedged it until it came loose. Because I don't know that it was no one really knew how deep it was, although I suppose there's a hole in the ground there now. You could probably look and see how deep it was. All right, so... But I mean, this is the first kind of cool,
but I'm
stupid
hungry for
story.
Information. This is some stuff I'm wondering.
Well, but
unfortunately, none of these.
Go ahead.
Well, I mean, I don't think this can compete with the crop circles, right? I mean, those were magnificent.
Yeah, those were cool. And those are the ones, right? That's what I was kind of alluding to, that no one could actually do that. The way those are bent, we looked at it under a microscope. No, it turns out it's still all people. It's still all artists. I mean, so there's a lot of explanations for things, but aliens are probably down in the list when there's 7 billion people on the earth that have nothing else to do, and they look cool.
Can come up with things to do. Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's probably people, but I'm just fascinated with how you would put something there and then I don't know, if I went to the trouble to build a metal tower in the desert, I'd be taking friends there every other weekend to show them my cool metal monolith. I wouldn't just leave it there for 6 years and just bide my time until someone found it.
But maybe it had some weird purpose, and they'd only do it in the middle of the night when no one was there, and they were there all the time.
Right, they visit it once a year and perform some crazy ritual.
Right, exactly. And so it was all smudged, so, who knows?
Well, you know what another thing...
Don't scare me, George.
You know what could be? How about this?
All right, go ahead.
What if the entire thing, the object itself... and society's response to it, including the media's response to it, etc., is all an experiment. Just to see, one, how people interact with it when they see it, what their behaviors are. Do they report it? Do they document it? Do they go right to social media? What do they do? Do they keep on coming back? And then what does society do when they hear about it? Because, I mean...
So when the real aliens show up, then
I don't need it to be back. I'm just curious.
I mean, we could go build one. I know that we can go to Home Depot.
Scoop.
Let's go to Home Depot and get some MDF plywood. We'll spray paint it silver. And we'll put it in your yard. It's a 1-day project. It's an easy build.
But what you've done now is you've given this piece of land an identity, and you've made it more interesting. So, for instance, and I'm sure every lake's got one now, but up in Lake Champlain, there's supposedly a lake monster that some people have seen.
Right.
Champy, he's called now.
Correct.
And so there's Champy merchandise, and it allows for content for all the little harbor tours of Champy, or not harbor tour, boat tours, the shuttle that goes from New York to Vermont, etc. And these kind of things color stuff that's otherwise boring. Like even in Fenway Park, there's that seat in right field that was where Ted Williams' last home run,
the red seat,
hit, which is absolute horse bleep as far as I'm concerned. And supposedly
it was a lot longer than that. It was a lot longer than that seat, right?
I don't know if it was longer than that seat, but I just know that it's too cute to be true. And that it hit a Yankees fan in the head, the last home run. And he did get a home run, but, they served it up. They teed up the pitch to him. But still, it's like a lot of these things, there's so much stuff and some interesting things in every place that are usually interactive, and so it leaves an imprint on you. Like, for instance, in Congress, George, I'm sure you've been there, to the Hall of Statues, where in one part of the room you can say something and you can whisper. It's the same thing at St. Paul's Cathedral in London. There's an area where you can stand on one part of the dome on the inside and be a football field away and whisper, and the person can hear it. And it allows for you to personalize, to interact in a way that you're part of it now. So, and it brings it like an extra layer of the sensation to it.
Yeah. Right, yeah. It gives it some meaning, this spot that doesn't really have any meaning on its own.
Right, and especially if you're lucky enough to not be able to explain it. If it's a monolith, or, acoustics can tell you how the other stuff works, but it probably couldn't always.
I mean, they had a pretty good understanding of acoustics for a long time.
That's
why they built things in those shapes,
Well, Or they accidentally discovered that's what happened.
I'm not going to ask Tom. If he's heard this, but because he's not heard this. But George, have you ever heard they've done sort of simulations of what it would have sounded like with choirs singing in the Hagia Sophia?
No.
And it's just incredible. You can look it up.
You know what?
They did.
Alice,
they tested the sound qualities of the cathedral of that huge, crazy dome.
He is Googling Hagia Sophia. George doesn't know what that is.
No, I do know what it is.
With the songs they would have sung then in the Hagia Sophia, the hymns in Greek, and then they sort of run them through a filter of what the sound qualities that they measure in the cathedral, like what that would do to the choir singing. And it's just incredible. It's so crazy. So, I mean, and that's an old building. So they had some acoustics back then.
Acoustics in spaces are really an art and science. I mean, when there's a new concert hall built, there's people that come in literally to tune it to make it sound good. So, and back in the day, they didn't have computers and they didn't have any kind of analysis. They just kind of listened to it and it got a sound.
Right.
I mean, I've done the opposite of that in my film room to deaden the sound. I've built sound deadening panels so that if you're sitting in the seating area, it's absolutely as close to perfect as I can get it, which isn't that close, but it's very good. Otherwise, it's like an echo chamber in there, and everything sounds. You want the dialogue and the sounds to be crisp and not be echoed because that distorts them. Yes, go ahead, Thomas.
Right. Yeah, they do that in restaurants too and other workspaces so that it's not the constant din happening.
Mm-hmm.
So, George, have you ever witnessed something unexplainable that
I have,
that was not necessarily paranormal, but was maybe by definition was paranormal, actually?
Well, I've told my UFO story here before, which is just kind of a 15-second thing, and it was just like, what was that? That's really strange. And of course, my mind went to all the normal explanations for it. Well, that must be a weather balloon. Why is it moving so fast? Well, there's no motors on it. It's got to be a drone. There's no motors, not making any noise. And now it's gone. And it was pretty large. And what was that? And it just I just kind of started thinking about it. And of course, I started looking into all this UFO stuff, and all these people are all nuts. Correct? They're just,
right.
No offense to anyone with it. Right? They're just, it always goes to Bigfoot. And then wait a minute, what's that? Right? Where did that come from? So who knows? Although there's all this stuff that came out last year, right? The Navy, these fighter pilots saying, and they
released all this stuff.
The Pentagon said, yeah, we don't know what this is. And we're going to investigate it further. So that's, that kind of blew me away, which made me think of my experience. And but that's the only strange thing I've seen.
Yeah. I mean, there are things out there that we don't know what they are, but whether or not they're what people on the internet think they are is quite another question. That's a quite a leap to make, just because we don't know what something is.
Years ago, I had a friend who was involved in, do you remember from the late 70s, there were photos of the Loch Ness Monster taken underwater by MIT guys?
Mm-hmm.
I knew one of them.
Yeah, I had a friend. We got really into cryptozoology for a while and read all those things, like different photos people had taken of things supposedly. And I mean, a lot of them are fake, but so it is interesting.
Apparently, this was like there's this guy who was a patent attorney at MIT guy, and it's like kind of like me and my college friends went and built a monolith. He said, I went to Loch Ness on vacation to Scotland. I saw something weird. I want to go figure out there's something in there. So they got Doc Edgerton to loan them side scan sonar. The guy I knew, Charlie Wyckoff, is a film emulsion guy. He built the film, designed the film to film the first atomic bomb tests, which you couldn't go there and set the exposure. So it was a billion layers of emulsion, and they were different ISO speeds, so that you'd get a perfectly exposed thing no matter what. He did the film under contract for NASA for the moon landing. That's very thin, so they could do 250 shots in one Hasselblad thing. So he's a cool dude. So he rigged up a camera with 16 millimeter film that would take a frame a second. They had lights, strobe lights that would go off, again, Doc Edgerton, and the side scan sonar, and they just left it hung under a boat. And the first day, 2 or 3 large objects approached it. He claims this is all true. They took photos, and there's one of like a fin, there's one of like a body in the distance, but it was all sort of debunked. They sent it, supposedly had friends at JPL that went and processed it, and they said, they maybe have processed it too much. They're looking for something that's not there. And so, but he claimed it was real, but it was a lot of fun. He said, no, it's a great way to spend the summer, right? So it's a good summer vacation. It's nice and cool up in Scotland.
It's interesting.
And that's some fun. What nerds do on vacation.
I've heard some people say they think Nessie was there. I've had friends tell me that they think Nessie was there, but has now died and isn't there anymore.
Our kids know the name of that dinosaur. What's it called?
Nessie?
Yeah.
Plesiosaur.
Nessie's not a dinosaur.
No. Is that what it is?
Yeah, plesiosaur. Well,
Alice, did we share the same experience with a ghost at Melrose together?
Yes.
Ooh.
We both were awake for that.
Yeah.
Oh.
Really?
Well, tell that story. The ghost.
Oh, so we were lying in bed, and it was incredible, actually, George.
And we heard footsteps.
Yeah, we heard footsteps.
Actually, we multiple times heard footsteps, when we were downstairs.
Hold on.
Right.
We were lying in bed one night, and we heard something coming up to us, approaching from the. It sounded like a chain? Sounded like it might have been carrying a chain or something, walking from the upstairs down the hall.
That's never good.
Us. And it was crazy. No, and it was really, this whole thing was weird. It was really the thing that makes it so odd. It was kind of a ripoff of all the top cliche file experiences you'd get. Because then suddenly we heard something sound like a squirrel on the roof, and then more, and then thousands of these things running all over the place. Mm-hmm. And then this thing with the chain was had stopped at one point, and then this is the stunner, of course it's going to happen.
Horror movie cliche.
Yes, is that the sound of kids laughing and singing out in the yard, dancing around a tree.
Oh.
And all singing and dancing. And this is, and this is the thing that's what I get from most of that. Did it speak to us, Alice?
No, I didn't get, I don't think we heard any
but
words
anyway, the thing was, George, is that I don't know that we were petrified, but it was definitely.
But we were both like,
curious.
Did you just hear that?
Yeah. All of our senses were engaged. So here's the next thing. And we heard, like I told you, you could tell, you could hear when those footsteps were coming, you could feel the reverberation of the wood being depressed. So it was something with heft.
Right.
You know?
Ooh.
Which made it more scary, obviously. Just real. So and we weren't drunk, we weren't on acid. It was just a night. And we have, at that point we just had one kid, I think, and so you're busy, you're tired, and you can't let it derail your day. But so it was when something like that actually does happen, probably like your UFO. It's not like, oh my God, guys, guess what? I think we told our neighbor, or they asked us if we had heard stuff, and we said, yeah. As a matter of fact, yeah, something last night. So, but anyway, the thing that was crazy was me and Alice and I. Then the next day, my mother and brother came over, and we were sitting downstairs in the kitchen, or talking in the kitchen, and we told them the story. And my mother was all intrigued because she likes that kind of stuff. My brother was like, whatever. And we said, yeah, there were the sounds. This thing was walking around. You could hear it. And George, just as we were telling the story, the footsteps happened above us.
Oh!
And my brother's and it was walking again. And my brother's not a believer in this stuff, and I'm not a believer in this stuff. I don't even believe other people who mention this exact thing. And it happened. And my mother was kind of spiritual, and she was all into it, and raced upstairs or something. But it was incredible, that it happened those two times. Then it never happened again.
So
that's the only thing.
The people that are into this say, well, what happened in your house? Did you go look at the history? How old was your house in Melrose?
So we did find out, it was about 100 years old, but we did find out subsequently that there had been a dance studio in the yard. There was a separate building, we found stuff when we put our fence in, that there was the foundations of another building there. And then it had been multiple things. It had been a sort of bar, and it had been a clubhouse thing.
Right.
But it had at one point been a dance studio.
Had been a dance studio, and a woman who came by said she remembered there being two weeping willows. There was one, we were there. Remember, you've seen it, George, actually.
Yeah, I have.
And there were two weeping willows, and she said that kids used to do figure eights while dancing and singing around the weeping willows. Which is kind of what we were hearing.
That's pretty spooky.
It is remarkable to think that it's not like the first thing we say to anybody we meet. But it was just one of those. It was
hey, can I tell you my ghost story? Yeah.
Right. It's just so real, like your UFO story, that it's something that actually happened.
So,
yeah. But I mean, I think it's unhealthy to make it like a lifestyle. Like, I mean, like George says, it's fun to like, okay, this thing happened, or like you go try and photograph nuts. But the people that turn this into their life's work to like try and find Bigfoot are a little whacked. Like, I'm not sure it's the healthiest way to live your life, like looking for these things.
So Alice, by the
that's
way,
why I think you just have to have the experience and move on.
Right. So Alice, I did. That's basically what I did. But Alice, by the first time I told Tom this story, the UFO story, he says, "Oh, you're just the one they would come visit. You're the ones. You're just the kind they'd come visit." Right. And I said, "Thank you very much."
And which to you is a compliment.
I don't know. I don't know if I took it that way. I was a little taken aback by it, to be honest with you. But yeah, no, I've kind of just let it go. I was like, I don't know what that was. That was pretty. I'd like to see it again. I'd like, and of course, when it's so quick, it's like I didn't have time to take the camera phone out of my pocket. By the time I did, it was gone, and I have like a photo of the side of my car. And it's like, damn. So I know what time it was.
Right.
I have the photo with the time, and I went.
Right.
So I did go do stuff like I went to look up the Worcester Airport, the nearest National Weather Service station. What was the wind aloft? It was a beautiful day. It was the end of July. It was July 30th or 31st. It was like on a Friday night, and it was just about 6 o'clock, and it was just a nice light winds, hardly any clouds in the sky, few puffy clouds, and this thing is moving a lot faster than I thought the wind was. And I looked at the wind, and it was actually a crosswind to the direction this thing was going, and it was only about 7 miles an hour, even aloft. So that was weird. So I don't know.
George, I think I showed you last year. The thing a few years ago, we were having a party in our yard. There was something we thought it was a UFO.
Yeah, I was thinking that two planes.
I got video. Right, and I've got video, and a photographer who shoots planes. Right. Yeah, he said, no, that's just planes. It's just planes. It wasn't planes. We had people there. It was low, and there's video, and it absolutely wasn't. But it's interesting. Like, there are personalities in this world. There are those who are incredible because they're always seeing stuff, and then there are those who just love to shut stuff down. You wonder if there are those who love to shut stuff down. No, planes. No. And you wonder if they're in on it, or if or they're just jerks. It's like I don't go around a lot saying there are UFOs around or ghosts. I'm a non-believer. So it should.
I don't know what to think.
You just assume. Mostly Tom just assumes that a lot of things that other people take as fact are full of it and just total BS. Like, I mean, you should go to the Museum of Science with him sometime, George. It's a trip because he doesn't believe about 2/3 of the exhibits in there. He thinks they're just not true. Like dinosaurs, fake news.
How about that electrical cage?
George, you honestly think?
Electrical cage.
George.
What?
I mean, if they can do anything with electricity there. I think it can be manipulated. That's no problem. But do you think that the T-Rex had small hands like that? That doesn't it makes no sense.
How would it eat
at all? Unless they ate walnuts, which means no. Well, they're chickens, right? So maybe it had little wings or something. I don't know.
They didn't have.
But also, I've been there. I used to go to the museum.
I don't know. I love the Museum of
George,
Science.
I used to go to that museum in the 70s, and in the 70s, the pterodactyl was just skin. Now the pterodactyl is now furry. Right. So in other words, it's becoming the bird it always was.
Oh, it would have to have feathers of some kind, right? So,
since when? Well, it didn't back in 1980.
No, now they know. They know more. But there's a big move afoot to clone things. Jurassic Park may be real. They may actually do this.
Just having the little dusting stuff in a pit, tells you now they know there's feathers.
A little DNA.
Why didn't they know that? What am I going to learn? What happens in 20 years, George? They have racing stripes in 20 years? You're in on it with them because you want this stuff to be true.
That would be awesome.
This is a geeky kind of thing.
It is.
Those with high intellects, but who fawn over monoliths like this kind of thing.
No, I thought the monolith was really cool, but it's definitely okay. So the monolith is art that made you feel good and made you think. So it's actually a success. Whoever did that, it's a success. So yeah, maybe they came and took it, but I think just some people, a lot of people apparently showed up. This guy David Serber, he said I was the first guy there, but then like 40 people showed up, and there were kids sitting on top of their. The monolith, and it was all good fun.
Next time we hop in the car and we take the kids down and get pictures of them.
We're going to the monolith
before it goes.
There could be
before it goes. Did you know, George, that our Vermont house is in the path of totality of the next solar eclipse?
Yes, I'm psyched for this.
Trips.
I am psyched for this. Can I come over? Can I come over to watch them?
Yes,
good. Okay,
invited.
Good. We're in.
You can go in my stead, George.
That's good. No, I'm telling you, Tom. Well, you remember I did those live hits back for Herald Radio from the total eclipse in Nebraska in 17 or 18? Now it's been so long, I've forgotten. But that was awesome. That was like now all I want to do is go see total solar eclipses, but I have no time. It was really a mind alter. I could
Trump
see why.
debunked your BS about that, by the way.
What? That it wasn't total?
He stared right into it.
He did, yeah. Well,
Well, fine might be kind of a strong word for Trump.
I think for a couple seconds you're probably okay, but yeah. So, but you would have a hole in your. I tell you, I did kind of burn a hole in the sensor of my camera doing that, taking photos of it. I noticed later they've sort of. It's like if you do occasionally look at the sun, right? You have these round dots in your eyes for about a minute. If you just got a quick glance, yeah, my sensor kind of. It faded away over time. It was okay, but I thought, crap, I ruined my camera. But it was really, I could see why people would get freaked out because it suddenly is dark. It's just like the lights go off, boom, but it's glowing on the horizon and the wind starts blowing and it's very eerie. And then you hear like animals in the distance. I could see if you knew nothing, you didn't know that was coming.
Dogs howling and stuff.
You'd just freak out. You'd go, what the heck was that? And then it's over. And then it's like the lights come back on, boom, and it's lit. And the sun is, it would just freak you out. I got to imagine, but it's the coolest thing. I can't wait for the next one. Tom, you got to go to that, dude. You got to go. Worst case is you just drink. It could rain.
The path of totality, you mean?
Yeah.
We're going to be in the path of totality.
All right, if we can
what
make
will
it
happen in the path of
totality. So George just described it. You can go listen to the podcast on a replay if you need to hear it again.
Yeah, go listen to replay. Right. So there's going to be if we can all live to 2079. Okay, so I'll be pretty old, and so will you. There's going to be a total eclipse that goes from like Pennsylvania across Manhattan, all of Connecticut, all of Massachusetts, right over us, and the totality is like 9 minutes. And it's a huge, wide path. Man, I mean, they already know, right? Because they can do the celestial mechanics. So so I want to live to 2079. I want to sit on the front porch of the manse here and watch the total eclipse. I am ready. Well,
you know what, George?
Should we call
I'm going
it?
to choose to pass away earlier.
All right,
hopefully, by the time the Vermont one rolls around, I'll be good on.
Yeah, hopefully you'll be around for that. That's like a couple of years. Path of Totality is awesome.
Yeah, it's like 2024 or 25 or something.
Path of Totality.
Path of Totality.
So, George, you'll be happy to know Alice as well. Alice, you need to find. Do you have a sister that's available who's exactly like you? I don't know George's romantic situation.
Right now, that last thing seems to be over. So yeah, I'm available.
Okay, George is available. That's good to know. George, Alice watches the Twilight Zone marathon on New Year's Eve.
Oh, nice.
Three. Yeah,
I watched the Three Stooges marathon on New Year's Eve.
When we first started dating, Tom was like, "So what should we do for New Year's?" And I was like, "Well, I can't really leave because the Twilight Zone marathon's on. Can't miss that."
And of course, in those days, Tom would say, "I'll do anything she says." Right? So I'll just watch that. Those are really well written and really cool half-hour anthology.
They are, but you know what? But the thing about the Twilight Zone is they're so unlike anything else at the time. There's something so antiseptic about 50s and 60s TV.
Yes.
And that comes on, and it's a modern day mind bleep. It really is.
Right.
So it feels like it's a stark thing to watch, and it feels so. God, I want to use the word queer in the way, you know what I mean?
What it used to mean.
Right. It's so curious. The sound stages
eerie?
And the set. Eerie, yes. Like I think about the one with the Sherman's Last Stand with the Indians, and it's obviously
Custer.
Custer, sorry. It's obviously like the back lot of a Universal Studios, like crappy movie parking lot or something. But it just feels so. It's so odd. It's so. You're right. It is eerie.
It's a cookbook.
They're more like a play almost. Like they don't tend to. There are some exceptions, obviously, but they don't tend to have like a ton of they don't tend to go a lot of places in the episode. Each episode tends to be set in like kind of a limited physical space, and like the characters come in and out.
Money.
Like it's more to me like a play than it is like a real TV show. You know, they are dramatic in that way, in the sense of like being like a drama production, you know, where the characters come in and out and you build to a climax. They're very like structured stories, and I don't know. I just think they're brilliant. I love seeing all the old actors on them. I love Shatner in it. Like I don't know.
It's funny that they pick Shatner.
He was awful in that, actually.
Shatner.
That was peak Shatner.
He was fantastic. I love him.
He was awesome and awful at the same time.
Well, right, because he's such an over actor, and you know, and he that's his thing, being over the top. But that role did call for somebody to be over the top, but he certainly took the seriousness out of it.
Oh, love him.
Yeah, he's great. I mean, he's still relevant, and he's 90 years old. He'll be 91.
Yeah, he's fighting on Twitter with people.
Yeah, he is.
George, that he went back and forth with me on Twitter.
Did he really? Did you fight with him?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, we had a conversation.
Oh, nice.
He wanted to know if I knew somebody and like name whatever. And so I said, yeah, and he was asking me about him, and I didn't know the guy, but I was just saying,
you blue check mark people, that's your little private club there, right?
Maybe that's what that is. Maybe that's what it is. I wonder if there's...
But then do you remember what you told him at the end of the conversation?
No.
He like got annoyed with you or something, and you said, "We're both Shats. That used to mean something."
Oh, nice. He didn't respond?
I think he was horrified.
He reported me to Jack Dorsey. Probably called him.
He did, yeah. Probably
Remove
has his
this
number.
man's blue check mark.
Get this guy out of here.
Well, George, it's been nice.
It has been.
Getting back to you.
Let's do this more than once a quarter.
Way too long.
Let's do this once
this
a quarter.
Like the crossovers, like when Simon and Simon had Magnum PI on.
Right.
Except I'm on both shows, you know, so... But it's been fun cross-pollinating the massive reach of the Point of Things with the Burn Barrel podcast.
Awesome.
So that is our friend George Capalbo. Follow George on Twitter. A couple things we want to get to quickly before we move on. Anthony Fauci has spoken this weekend, and shock of all shocks, a new revelation.
And Dr. Fauci, New York City public schools shut down again earlier this month. I know your default position is that you'd like to see the schools open, but how do you make that happen, and how would you advise the incoming Biden administration on getting a sort of unified response?
Well, you know, Martha, that's a good question. We get asked it all the time. You know, we say it not being facetiously as a soundbite or anything, but, you know, close the bars and keep the schools open is what we really say. Obviously, you don't have one size fits all, but as I said in the past, and as you accurately quoted me, the default position should be to try as best as possible within reason to keep the children in school or to get them back to school. The best way to ensure the safety of the children in school is to get the community level of spread low. So if you mitigate the things that you know are causing spread.
I'm so sick of this. I'm so sick of this. The community spread. Mitigate the things that are causing the spread. I ain't buying it. I'm not buying that the spread is simply just caused by us breaking the rules. I'm not buying it. I believe the spread is caused by a freaking pandemic that health experts openly admit they don't know much about. They're learning on the job.
Right. And, I mean, out of the few things we know, for example, we know that school doesn't cause spread because we can see it. We've seen these countries go back to school. France doesn't even require masks in school. And, you know, there's no increased spread from that. There's no association. The cases among students they're picking up at home. They're not getting it from other students at the school. The teachers aren't getting it from the kids at school. They're getting it when they go out to a restaurant after school. You know, the whole thing is ludicrous. All the teachers are going to the grocery store. They can go into school and teach kids where they're seeing far, far fewer adults in a far less risky situation.
But you know what pisses me off too?
What?
Is it Fauci now, his tone with this stuff? I don't like him. Ever since he lied, I will never
About the masks?
Yep. Is it his tone now?
saying, now we're trying to implore, we're really trying to say there's a problem here. You know why? Because they're getting data showing that kids are being harmed and harming themselves, and possibly dying. I assume they are dying.
They're getting knowledge that...
So now he's acting like, oh, by the way, we have a new problem. Well, screw you, Fauci. We've been saying this for months and months and months and months.
In a very, very profound way, in a robust way. If you bring that down, you will then indirectly and ultimately protect the children in the school, because the community level is determined how things go across the board. So my feeling would be the same thing. If you look at the data, the spread among children and from children is not really very big at all, not like one would have suspected. So let's try to get the kids back, but let's try to mitigate the things that maintain and just push the kind of community spread that we're trying to avoid. And those are the things that you know well. The bars, the restaurants where you have capacity seating indoors without masks. Those are the things that drive the community spread, not the schools.
God, what a jerk. What a jerk.
Well, right. I mean...
The bars and the restaurants, the things that have no recourse really against our power right now.
Yeah.
We're not going to say the drugstores, CVS and Walgreens and Walmart and Home Depot and Lowe's and those other things. No. We're not going to say those things. But it really, if the spread is happening there too, you'd say it if you're the health person, unless you're simply trying to manipulate people.
Well, right.
What he's doing.
So it goes back to the thing about the protest, right? Like, the disease doesn't care whether you're doing something that's considered an essential service or not, right? If there's spread in indoor spaces, there's spread inside a grocery store just as much as there is inside a restaurant. I mean, I know people take their masks off to eat, but have you seen how people wear masks in grocery stores? Not all of them have the mask over their nose. They're not all N95 masks. A lot of them have the valve, which means that protects nobody except the person wearing it.
Looks cool, though.
Yeah. So, but the point is that, a virus doesn't care whether it's in a grocery store or a bar. The only difference is people's moral feeling about the place you're in, whether you really have to be there or not, right? You don't really have to be at the bar, but you do really have to be at the grocery store. If it was really that bad, you'd just shut down everything and send everybody food, right? Like, if the spread indoors was that terrible, then you wouldn't let people to go to grocery stores either, and you'd give them food. So it's just a question of the level of necessity that other people perceive these activities to have. The problem is, we as a society have apparently decided that school is just not essential for kids, which is fascinating, given the size of my property tax bill that I get in the mail 4 times a year. It's because it seems like when it comes to sending the bill to taxpayers, school is considered pretty darn essential. So I don't know what happened during the pandemic that school was the first thing to go and is the last thing to come back. I don't get it. You have school districts in Texas reporting 70% increase in students failing classes. 70% increase. I have a teacher friend who works in Everett, and she said out of her class, which I think is 5th grade, she had 3 students who handed in enough work in the spring that she would have really passed them in a normal year, but she had to pass everybody this year. You are destroying kids' lives. I mean, not my kids, because I took them right out of those schools because I don't want to deal with this stupidity. I'm not going to put up with it. And every parent that can do that has put their kids in parochial schools, which, by the way, are open, put their kids in other private schools, which, by the way, are open.
Yeah, in Massachusetts, almost 40,000 kids have gone off the rolls of public schools.
It's outrageous. It's so insane. And they're going to come back to the taxpayers and ask for more money because the state funding formula is going to reimburse schools less next year because of the lower enrollments this year. I really think the legislature is going to have to do something to mitigate that.
President Biden will handle it, Alice. He will be cutting a check for us. He'll be cutting a check for us. By the way, Biden has been out and about.
Brock and I think it's a right for people that have bad health care.
Mostly, this was a solemn family long weekend of sorts, so he was at church.
And if we do, and I'm sure we can proclaim the psalmist who wrote these following words. The Lord is my strength and my shield.
Problem with that, Alice?
I'm not going to... I don't feel good making fun of a stutter. What I'm told that is. But
Psalmist, he meant psalm.
Psalmist, the
right.
psalmist.
Right.
King
But there's
David.
a P in there, by the way.
There is a
inexplicably.
P. It's from the Greek. It's from the Greek. Yes. Anyway, yeah, it's Biden's problem now. And I don't know how now, after they've scared people like this, they're going to be able to get the schools reopened. Because we've all been told that if we open the schools, teachers will die, kids will die. We're risking our students' lives. You know, I saw something from one parent who was complaining in a Facebook group or wherever about Baker recently said that the priority should be in-person learning for the schools, because I assume they're seeing the numbers coming out of these schools where kids are not being educated at all.
Well, yeah, in between that and the healthcare numbers, obviously.
And they're getting panicked.
Mm-hmm.
And this parent was saying, like, I don't understand what to tell my kid. Why is the governor saying it's safe to go back to school? I've been telling my kid for months and months and months that it's not safe, that there's a dangerous virus, that the reason we're all doing this is that this is terribly dangerous and we have to not be in school to protect people. And like, so what? Is that just not true? And like, yeah, it turns out it isn't true, that we've had the data for a while that kids do not spread this virus, and that we've just been cowed by teachers' unions to the extent that we've taken something totally unrelated to the spread of the pandemic and just shut it down until further notice. You know, like school's just done until the teachers' unions decide that they feel comfortable going back.
It certainly has come to a head, because blue state governors now, for the most part, have come around and are saying, hey,
I mean Fauci's saying it.
Well, and so is Biden, as a matter of fact.
Everybody's
saying, come on there, we've got to do it.
There's part of that,
of course, is cuteness, of course, now because there's not a Donald Trump around, so we don't have to be performative in the pain that's being caused. But you're right. No, it's widespread.
Right. I mean, even when it was Trump, there were a lot of people who are saying, like, oh, Trump wants kids to die. That's why he's saying the school should reopen. There were crazy people saying that who have now changed their minds inexplicably. But for the most part, like, I think there were people. Charlie Baker was saying when Trump was still president that the schools should be open. A lot of public health people were saying this when Trump was still president, the honest ones, you know, because it was true. Because we had the data to show. It wasn't just that we didn't know if schools spread it or not. We had data to show that kids in school don't spread it, particularly elementary school students, who are the ones most harmed by this remote learning experiment. And I don't know, it's just unconscionable. And I personally think it's going to end up breaking the public school systems, because there are still going to be people dying of this next year when it's time for school to reopen.
People dying from something else too.
Well, right, but I mean, this is fundamentally for students, for school-age kids, this is less dangerous than the flu that we get every year. For other people, it's not. That is true. Mm-hmm. But for school-age kids, this is less dangerous than the flu. And we all sent our kids to school every year without masks on. I mean, I still taught my kids to wash their hands.
Hey, you know what we should do? I was going to play Nicole Hannah-Jones, but I don't want to piss people off. But go ahead.
So I want to finish one more thing about schools, and I want to know how you feel about this, because I have very mixed feelings. But so have you seen what New York is doing in order to reopen their schools now?
No.
It's a mandatory random testing program. So they're reopening the schools, but in order to send your kid back, you have to sign a form that gives the school permission to randomly test them for COVID whenever they feel like it. So, I mean, on the one hand, I'm glad they're reopening the schools, but like, would you ever agree to that? I mean, just on principle, I don't think I would agree to that. Would you?
No.
I mean, no way. Like, I don't let you randomly test my kid for STDs either. I don't let you test my kid for stuff. I'll take my kid to the doctor and test them for something if I want to. But our school district is piloting a testing program as well here in Pentucket.
So, by the way, every other third Thursday, we're going to jam a swab down your kid's nose. By the way, we don't know why, because we have to do it so that the teachers... along those lines, too good, by the way, the Lowell Sun is where I work, and one of the headlines we have from 2 days ago is Littleton schools requiring families to swear they're following the state's coronavirus guidelines. Littleton schools, you have to fill out this thing saying you swear that that nobody was close during Thanksgiving, and that everybody followed the rules and wore a mask and all that stuff. So there you go.
So we had we had several close relatives over here for Thanksgiving.
You may have seen.
We were up to 9. Yes, you can check them out in our last video. Some of our relatives that were here.
Our dating service is open, by the way.
We were up to 9 people in the house. Don't say that. It sounds so
human trafficking.
Prostitute-y. I don't know.
I know.
It's not good. It's not good. But you can hear from some millennial women about
dating service is not an
dating
escort
life.
service, Alice.
I don't know. And
Maybe we're
I don't like
vetting potential suitors for very successful young women.
They are very successful.
Okay.
They're both very successful.
For a minor fee. And that's where it gets gray area.
Well, you know what? You can filter it through me. I'll be the judge if they deserve to call my sister. So the dating service.
I'm already giving out her. I'm doxing her to people.
Okay.
Go ahead,
You can filter it through me. Anyway. So we were up to 9 people. So we could have had one more. And I wanted to invite my brother also, who goes to BU. Mm-hmm. But he's not allowed to leave for Thanksgiving. He can get an academic probation, like gets in trouble at school and suspended or what. I don't know what colleges do.
Have you been traveling, young man?
Yeah, no. So you can go home for Thanksgiving, but you can't come back. If you go home for Thanksgiving and you go back, you get on academic probation. So he wouldn't come. So he was alone on Thanksgiving.
Can you imagine? That's great. How great. God,
How vicious are they?
Alice, do we have any electronic mailings or notes that we should read before we bid adieu to the folks until Monday?
Let me see what we have here.
It's crazy on YouTube. Listening to the like I said, the your blues backing track. If you're a Beatles fan, White Album fan, you know what that is. Yes, I'm lonely. The backing track is just a bass and some drums. It's freaking awesome. But God, I gotta detach myself from this.
Okay, so you remember Ryan from Plastow?
Yes.
So he weighed in. We mentioned him during our episode that was about Gen X, and he wrote to us about it. He said, Tom and Alice, the episode released last night was great. I'm pretty much smack dab in between both of you for age. I was a huge fan of Chips and the A-Team.
Of course.
But I also enjoyed the Backstreet Boys.
No.
The Best, or even New
Ryan.
Kids on the Block.
No!
The Wonder Years and Family Matters were the go-tos on TV. Also, my Friday nights were...
Family Matters with the Urkel?
I don't know.
But the Wonder Years, obviously.
Yeah. Also, my Friday nights were booked by TGIF.
I don't know what that is. Do you know what that is?
Is that an MTV thing, maybe?
I don't think so.
I don't know.
TGIF. I know. We'll look it up.
We'll look it up. And someone else can write to us. Ryan, you can write to us again and tell us what it is. I will also always remember Stuck in the Middle with You from Reservoir Dogs, or Shout from Ferris Bueller's Days Off, or Twist and Shout from Ferris Bueller's Days Off.
Okay. A couple of problems. Couple of problems.
Okay.
Ryan, I love you. But I have an issue.
Okay.
With Stuck in the Middle with You being something that people remember from Reservoir Dogs.
Why?
The song is from the 70s or 60s. It's a Steelers Wheel song. And I kind of think that you should have known the song before Reservoir Dogs. I certainly think...
He's in his 30s, though.
I understand. I wasn't alive in the 60s either, Alice, but I know some of this stuff. And Twist and Shout, although that was very iconic. Both scenes were very iconic. I agree. I understand. I just get a little nervous when people learn stuff only from movies. And Twist and Shout, yes, that was a huge, incredible scene. And that movie was freaking brilliant. Ferris Bueller should have won every Oscar. Every Oscar. And that was just brilliant. That was just brilliant. But I get worried when people learn songs from movies. And they're like, oh, yeah, no, I know that song. Well, my kids are the same. Now, they know, like, all songs from when I was a kid, like, Don't You Forget About Me. They know from the non-gendered zombie shows that they watch, because they sing and dance to that song. That's a song from that. No, that's not a song from that. That's a song from Simple Minds. Maybe The Breakfast Club. Maybe that's allowed. But these are the things that old people like me do. We dot around.
Yell at people for only knowing things from movies. So then Ryan tells me it is not a big deal that Alice did not recognize any of the clips. Her priorities were in order back then. Thank you, Ryan.
That's
and the
fine.
A-Team wasn't one of them. I love it when a plan comes together. Keep up the great work.
Great George Capalbo, Alice.
Okay.
She said?
Emily wrote to us Emily says, "Hi, Tom and Alice. I just wanted to tell you guys how much I love the Burn Barrel podcast."
That's nice. I love the name Emily too. Do you,
Alice? I do. It's a great name.
Yeah, it's full of torque. Emily. It's the way it's constructed makes it easy to say with force. Emily, Emily. We had a nice Emily when I grew up in Winchester. Alice.
Okay.
Remember the Beatle magic, all that stuff?
Well, Emily says she discovered Tom by listening to Jerry's podcast, which I originally listened to because I am a Turtle Boy fan.
Oh, nice.
I am a college student, so every day I am stuck listening to crazy
Emily,
liberals.
we need to talk to more college students, young.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you go? Where does she go? Does she tell us?
No, she doesn't tell us.
I'd love to hear what you're up to, Emily.
Listening to your podcast makes me feel sane and makes me laugh out loud. You guys are awesome. Yes. Oh. And were you allowed to go home for Thanksgiving, Emily, or did your school keep you in lockdown in the dorm?
No kidding. Oh. I'm happy. I figure that a lot of people who love the Turtle Boy stuff would think we're anodyne. You know, that he's cutting edge stuff.
Yeah.
Certainly.
We're lame compared to Turtle Boy.
Yeah, he's down there. I mean, he's doing the work he's doing.
John wants to know, in the spirit of Thanksgiving, what your take on Arlo Guthrie's Alice's Restaurant is.
So this is my take on it. My take is it was I used to hear it as a kid because we would go and have Thanksgiving with some really rich, actually, with some very wealthy, waspy people in a huge house that smelled like pine. They had very nice things. And so we would have, and so they would always play it, and it was a very boomer thing to sit around, play Trivial Pursuit, and then put on Alice's Restaurant, get drunk on red wine. We were just kids, so we don't know. But so I have a bad taste in my mouth because of that. Because the boomers' nostalgia, as I'm coming off of a full show of Tom's self-indulgent TV watching in the 80s to try to reach out and embrace my fellow Gen Xers. But the self-indulgence of the boomers, the thing kind of soured me on it. But I think it's cool, and it's a funny song. Do you know what else?
I mean, I've heard it.
It's cool. It's just a storytelling by Arlo Guthrie, who I believe also wrote Good Morning America, How Are You? Don't you know me? I'm your native son. Spirit of New Orleans, which we talked about today.
I do love that song.
Yes. I think that's his too.
Okay.
By the way, which is brilliant because that's a brilliant song. Mm-hmm. So that's where it's complicated is what I'm saying, essentially. Too many times I sat in too many times at that huge cavernous dining hall, which looked like Hogwarts, essentially. And
when you're from the wrong side of the tracks over on the Woburn side of Winchester.
That's right. That's what it was. We were.
So what was this in the
some
flats?
of the sons? No, this was not in Winchester. This is not in Winchester. These were just business associates of my dad's, who was essentially a lobbyist, essentially. Mm-hmm. Not a lobbyist like K Street in a nice car lobbyist. No. This was a small business advocate. But no, they used to have long conversations about like meringue.
Oh.
Yeah, and how to make it and the derivation.
I like making meringue.
Oh, I know. You fit right in there. You go. I can see if they're there. They're there for you. So.
And then finally, Tara wrote to us. Remember Tara? You weren't sure if she was Tara.
Yeah, Tara. Yeah.
So she said it's pronounced like Ara and Tiara.
Oh.
And she wrote because she wanted to comment on your joke about hail and rain.
Yes.
And she says, I totally got your joke, and I feel like it should have gotten a little more comedic recognition.
Thank you, Tara. Thank you. At least you're a woman who appreciates my humor, unlike some people. Thank you very much. Thank you. That feels good to be validated by that.
I know.
Something that you clearly missed, Alice.
I heard the joke, honey.
It was, do you get it?
I get it.
Should have been called rain because he spit.
I get it.
Mm-hmm.
Hail.
You know, maybe I'll get that cut of me saying that for the next show, for tomorrow.
Okay.
Well, is that it? Do we clear it up for today and say hello and meet back here tomorrow? You know, you know what I need you to do, Alice? Start saying same bat time. Do you know what that means?
Same bat time.
Same bat place.
Like we're batting at the same time.
No, forget it.
Same bat time. What does it mean?
It's a Batman reference from the original Batman.
Oh.
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. This isn't. I'm not bringing my best today. I'm sorry, but I'll be better tomorrow, everybody. Alice, Tell the people what you wore.
So you can find us on Twitter at Burn Barrel Pod, Facebook.com/Burn Barrel Podcast, on Parler, Burn Barrel Podcast. You can shoot us an email, burnbarrelpodcast@gmail.com. You can find us on YouTube, Tom Shattuck's Burn Barrel on YouTube, where you can subscribe, like videos, watch us do this, and check out that there. And anywhere else that we are, I can't even remember.
And if we do, and I'm sure we can proclaim the palmist, with the palmist who wrote these following words: "The Lord is my strength and my shield.